welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here, we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Caroline, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
First question, what is something you wish people knew about you that you don't think many do?
Ooh, this is such a good one. I wish more people knew that I am I'm just like normal. Like I think online, like you see psychic medium, energy healer, and people assume I have this really like strict, disciplined lifestyle, or I never drink alcohol and I never yell at anybody and I never fall into like deep depressions, but like I really all of those things happen to me. All of those things are true. I love reality TV. I drink too much wine. I go to nightclubs sometimes, less often than I used to. I struggle with my mental health, and just because someone is a spiritual guide or a healer, it definitely doesn't mean that they're perfect and they're not walking their own journey. Just because I have an intuitive connection that is maybe stronger than some other people's, it doesn't mean I have all of the answers for myself. I really have to lean on a lot of different tools, resources, mentors, teachers, and continue my own growth and healing to show up and serve in the best way I possibly can.
That's such a good point because it can be easy to place people on pedestals or to other people, especially in this realm of spirituality where we expect people to be so like pious and perfect. But breaking that barrier and being like, no, I'm just a messy human who also is deeply connected to my spirituality and my intuition, like they coexist within each other. And I have so many questions for you because, as someone who also really values my relationship with my intuition, I am so curious with how this exhibits itself for you. And I know that it wasn't something that you always felt super connected to, and it kind of unfolded for you as you got older. So I would really love to hear this story and how you first started to connect to your intuition, realize you were having these spiritual gifts, and yeah, just how it unfolded for you.
It was definitely a really interesting journey. Like you said, I didn't know I had like quote unquote psychic or intuitive gifts until I was around 25. I wasn't one of those kids who was like, seeing ghosts or having visions or saying these really deep, profound things to my parents. I was just very like quote unquote normal. I grew up on the East Coast in Connecticut. My family wasn't really particularly religious or very spiritual. I didn't know anything about astrology or spirituality. Like none of this stuff was introduced to me at all in my life until I moved to Los Angeles to go to college. And it was like in that move to this different city, Los Angeles obviously lends itself to a bit more of like a spiritual tilt than I had ever experienced before. So in college, I started to, read my horoscope and get into astrology and learn about crystals. And it was all very like light and playful and fun. I didn't really have a lot of language for spirituality. And it's just even funny looking back, like even just like 8, 10 years ago when I was in college, like so much of the stuff wasn't even really being like talked about yet. And it was during COVID, of course. I feel like that's like the impetus for so many of people's journeys lately in the space. But it was in that time I was going through a really challenging time at my job. I had chosen a career path in entertainment. It was my dream to work in the music industry in Los Angeles. I had fallen in love with music festivals in particular, and I spent a lot of my early 20s just like grinding and finding all of these different opportunities in the music world until I finally landed like my quote unquote dream job working for a pretty well-known music festival company. And it was really a dream. Like I got to travel the world, going to like these insane festivals, and on paper it looked perfect. And slowly, though, things started to disintegrate. Things became really toxic. The person I was working for was just a really not a great person. And a lot of weird, interesting things started happening to me. I started experiencing anxiety and depression for the first time. I was starting to have really weird health situations, and I just wasn't feeling good, honestly. And it was in that desperation to kind of feel better. I revisited some of these spiritual things that I was introduced to in college, astrology, human design, gene keys. I just was trying to find like any sort of human typing thing because I realized that what I thought was my purpose wasn't my purpose. And not only was it not my purpose, it was actually like really wreaking havoc on my life, on my relationships. And I was like completely and utterly out of alignment. And I needed to find something that was going to feel more aligned and purposeful for me and create like a better life for myself. So, through doing all of those things, I kind of was like, okay, like this is helping, but it's just a lot, you know? Like you're drinking through like a spiritual fire hose when you get that astrology report and it's like 25 pages. You're like, what is this? And I think my astrology did give me some clues. I'm a double Cancer, and so everything was like, you're really intuitive and you have this like deep connection. And to be honest, that was probably the first time I'd even heard the word intuitive, like really used in that context. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. And in that, I was like, I need someone just to cut through the noise. And I had never seen a psychic medium before. I had kind of thought it was like weird or scammy or like just like this, you're cheating. I don't know. I just had absorbed a lot of really negative cultural attachments related to psychics. And I think I was just at this breaking point. You know, I had tried looking for the answers myself. I had was trying to do all this self-help and personal development work, but I was just like, I feel like something's missing and I'm getting more information, but I'm not getting closer to embodiment or action or actually like really stepping foot on the path that I'm kind of meant to be walking. And so I finally the universe like conspired, it felt like, and I decided I wanted to go see a psychic, and I just asked the universe really randomly. This wasn't something I was doing at the time, to just show me one, to show me the right person. And like the next day, this influencer in Los Angeles like posted the phone number of her psychic on her stories. It was like very strange. Like I don't know who's out here doing that. And so I was like, okay, this is the person. I'll just call her, I'll make an appointment, and we'll just do it. And I did. And it was in that appointment that the psychic kind of told me, she was like, you know, you can do this too. It's a part of your path. And if you don't end up pursuing it, you know, things could end like life will become a little bit complicated for you. You probably won't feel that fulfilled. At no point was she like, being a psychic medium is your purpose and your mission. But looking back, I understand that really what she wanted me to lean into was tapping into the gifts, the intuition part of it. And tapping into that has made my life a lot easier. And it has led to me becoming a psychic medium. And so that was a really beautiful map, like point in the right direction. But when she said that, of course, I was like, well, what do you mean? Like, unlock my psychic gifts? Like, do what you do? Like, how does one learn that? I don't know. And so I kind of went home. I remember just feeling very like confused. And I just started to get my hands on more spiritual books than I had ever given myself permission to consume, I think, before. I started just reading all sorts of things about guides, about intuition, and reading all of that and starting to consume different types of media that maybe I had deemed previously a little bit too woo-woo or a little too much further out there. I was led to my first psychic mentor, and it was through her that I learned how to open up and use my psychic gifts. I started, you know, doing practice readings for people and tapping into my intuition in the context of giving a psychic reading, but then also beginning to use that intuitive practice on myself, starting to meditate each day, starting to connect with my guides, starting to really learn who and what my soul is, and beginning to kind of like take those meditations or those messages I was receiving through meditation and beginning to apply them to my life. And I'll kind of say, like, that is the first time I started consciously working with my intuition, living my life and making conscious choices from a place of intuition, I guess, rather than kind of just like guessing or my mind. I was starting to let my intuition win out over logic for the first time. And so from there, things have kind of unfolded over the last 5 years. I now give psychic readings, I do energy healing. My practice, in my business continues to evolve as my learnings and things that I do evolve as well.
Wow. And what does that look like for you now? I think a lot of people still don't quite understand what intuition even means. Like, how do you tap into your intuition? How do you let that guide you? And so I'd really love to hear what that actually looks like, the embodiment of it looks like for you.
Intuition to me is basically like the voice of your soul, right? There's this part of you that isn't Caroline or isn't Rachel. It's the part of you that's always been. It's like this energy that was created, and it kind of has traveled through all of these different lives, all of these different lifetimes, and it contains like your natural essence, like your natural being. No two souls are the same. Some souls are more playful, more mischievous, more serious, but there's these natural essence of you, and it goes with you into every lifetime, into every human experience or otherwise. And it tries to guide you kind of back towards your natural state. I guess I would say your soul self is the most natural part of you. It's the part of you that's most in tune with the universe, universal energy, right? It kind of exists on this different plane that we can't quite access as humans, which is the point of being a human, right? We have challenges, we feel negative emotions, all to kind of like learn and grow, right? The soul's only goal is to expand and to know itself more deeply. And through the contrast of the human experience, you get to know and meet your soul at deeper and deeper levels. And the soul kind of whispers to us through intuition, and it's through that voice that we're able to almost be like connected to the universe, be connected to different entities or players kind of in this other frequency. I almost see it as like the soul is like the broadcast system, and then like the intuition is like, I don't know, it's kind of like the feed like into the universe where you're able to like receive those messages. So to me, into when I'm like following intuition or I'm receiving intuition, I'm really like in deep communication with the universe and that kind of universal frequency, whether it's my soul or my spirit guides or my angels or just the universe itself. It's like you're tuning into like a frequency or a radio station where it's like kind of only about love and these like higher frequencies. And whereas like anxiety, I feel like is a really good way to like see the opposite of intuition, to understand what intuition is. Like your mind, your anxious thoughts, those are very focused on like the self, your humanness. They're very like focused on getting and attaining things. I always say if there's a should, could, would in there, it is your mind or your anxious thought patterns or your ego and not actually your intuition, right? Your intuition in the language of the soul is very focused on love, it's focused on we, it's focused on service, it's very like interested in the collective. And so once I kind of learned the difference between the two, I started to kind of play with what my life looked like when I follow my ego, the mind, and when I follow this intuition, the voice of my soul and my heart, I guess you could say, or your body. And I feel like I started to realize that when I would defy logic, because often intuition isn't very logical, a lot of things would start opening up for me. And right now, my practice with intuition is every day I meditate in the morning or I do some sort of breath work. I get into my heart space and I connect with my soul. I ask for, messages. What do you want me to know? What should I do today? How do you want me to serve? And I write those down because the mind is really quick to dismiss them. So if you don't write them, it can be really challenging to act on them. And then I try to act or live or embody one of the things or two of the things that my soul gave me for the day, whether, and it can be really simple things too, like sitting outside or working from a coffee shop outdoors. And it's just funny when the mind is saying, well, you need to be at your desk, you have all these calls and this and that. But when I go to the coffee shop, I'll meet somebody or I'll connect with somebody or I'll see a friend there. And there's just like different creative downloads that come through. And so my practice isn't really, it's not super strict. It's more of like a ongoing conversation, I guess. I feel like understanding intuition versus anxiety has allowed me to deepen my practice with it, going from like taking intentional space to receive the downloads and then not only just receive them, but to act on them and then collect continuous proof to kind of show myself that trusting my intuition is safe, trusting my intuition does open the door to a lot of beautiful opportunities and miracles that my mind could have really never led me to.
I'm really glad that you brought up this distinction between intuition and anxiety because this is something I talk about a lot with people is not knowing the difference and not being able to decipher between what is my intuition and what is my anxiety or what is my fear. And I think there is this component of sometimes it's our gut instinct saying, don't go there, this is dangerous, or don't do this. But really, when it's our intuition, it's still coming from this grounded, centered, calm place. It's not coming from that spiral mind that's telling us all the worst case scenarios and all the ways we're failing and all the ways things could go wrong. That's anxiety. And so really honing in on that and being able to decipher, like, is this coming from that grounded calm inner place within me, or is it coming from that ego monkey mind, as people say? And I would love to know if this process of connecting to it, leaning into the intuition, being able to detach from the anxiety, if that felt natural and more easeful for you once you started to lean into it, or if it felt challenging and like something you had to really intentionally focus on.
It's something that I've really had to put a lot of work into. It has not been natural or easy for me. Learning about intuition in the context of a psychic reading first was actually a bit more helpful because the hardest person to read for is yourself, honestly. And so learning to discern for another person when I'd go in to read for them, where I started to notice like, okay, this is what feels like intuitive information, and this is what feels like my mind trying to get in the way. And then when I started to apply that to myself, it definitely becomes much harder because you're so attached to what the mind says. You've lived your whole life a certain way, honestly, listening to the mind and the mind keeping you safe. And the second you kind of want to defy that logical brain, it can be really challenging. And I think another reason that discernment between intuition and anxiety was a bit of a struggle for me too, was because my nervous system was so dysregulated for so many years, especially in my early 20s. Like I mentioned, I really was struggling with my mental health. I was having a lot of like big emotional, mental like ups and downs. And it was during a season of really intense anxiety and panic, I started to realize how much my intuition was connected to my anxiety because I actually had to stop giving psychic readings during that time. I literally like could not read for another person, and it was during that time I was like, "Oh, okay, when I'm really really anxious, it is absolutely not possible to receive an intuitive download for another person, but let alone myself." And it led me on a journey of really honestly kind of like being a scientist and like, okay, when I do this with my energy body or my nervous system, I'm able to more clearly get these types of messages, or I can more easily discern between, oh, that's the ego mind and that's my intuition, right? When you're running around, when you're in survival mode, the intuition is such a whisper. It's such a small feeling, a nudge in your body that if you're just constantly activated, if you're constantly in this like hyper active state, you're never gonna really like connect with it. And I think that's why people honestly have such a hard time discerning between the two because they've never actually even let themselves feel what a true intuitive download feels like. And if they have received it, they haven't been consciously clocking it. And so I always say, and because of my own struggle, with discerning between intuition and anxiety, that it really is a muscle that you have to practice with. It's okay to be a little bit formulaic, to work within a framework. I think when it comes to intuition, people want to just be like, well, you either have it or you don't. It's either just like flowing through you or you're just like a normal person. And it's like, no, you can actually treat yourself like an athlete, like a business owner, an entrepreneur. Like you can give some masculine framework to this like really deeply feminine practice, and that will actually help you. And it helped me for sure open things up.
In your initial answer to the question, you actually said that you wish people understood that someone who is intuitive still struggles with their mental health. And in fact, I actually think that people who are intuitive can struggle with their mental health even more because they are so deeply connected, and either they're just very sensitive and it's the world kind of like washing over them so often, or they're having this disconnection moment and it's their intuition trying to tell them, no, you need to pay attention to this or you need to reconnect to yourself. And I think all of us, and I know that you agree with this, everyone is intuitive. And I think that all of us will feel this anxiety if we're disconnected from our intuition, unless we're so disconnected that we're not even letting ourselves feel the anxiety. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so connecting to our intuition for all of us requires us to be really present with what's coming up for ourselves and to develop this relationship with ourselves. I think one reason why people are so afraid of tuning in and being intuitive is because it requires them to be honest that they're struggling with their mental health or that things are coming up for them, and to get to know themselves and to develop this relationship with themselves and to get comfortable with that and to rely on their own inner guidance and not this external noise. Yes, some people are more intuitive than others or are meant to walk that path more fully than others, but we all are meant to have these intuitive gifts and we just disconnect from them because of that discomfort and the way that our society has told us to do so.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. I think to own and that you're an intuitive person, you actually are taking really radical accountability over your life. It's so much easier to say, well, like, I don't know, like, I just did this and then, they told me to go here. But if you're living and you're really claiming that I'm a deeply intuitive person, I am getting messages and downloads from my soul, I act and I live and I choose my choices from that place. When challenging things happen, when your soul leads you into a situation where you're meant to grow, and that can often be a lot of times through challenge and contrast, it's on you, right? Rather than you being able to say, well, I don't know, like that psychic told me to go and then take that job and now it sucks, or like my mom or my friends, or like I'm just kind of like living. It's really it's the ultimate accountability, and it really, but that's the whole point, right? Your soul are a lot of what we're here to remember is that we are the creator of our reality, and the best way to become the creator of your reality is to get in touch with your intuition, because it's just going to make things a lot easier. You're going to end up in a reality, in a life that feels really aligned and amazing, rather than creating from a space of what your mind thinks you should do, what you should have, what society thinks you should do and have. And I think that's why a lot of people achieve, but then they end up in a bit of a crisis and they feel deeply unhappy in the end. You can be a creator consciously or unconsciously. And I think conscious creators move from their intuition.
Yeah, I love how you said intuition leads us to radical self-accountability, and I think that is so true. And a lot of people are afraid of being accountable for themselves. They're afraid of walking their own path for many reasons. And we all have that at different times in our lives. But I think that when we allow ourselves to be guided by our intuition, we take our power back and we decide this is my life and I'm going to live it how I'm meant to, regardless of how any external source is telling me to. But I'm curious how that has felt for you because it is very scary. I mean, as someone who walks that path and is devoted to that path, it's still so challenging for me to always do my own thing, and people often don't understand it. And so I'm curious how the people in your life responded to this path that you chose. And if that came naturally to them, or if relationships changed and shifted and how that developed.
It's funny that you asked me that. I was actually like reflecting on that today, which I'm not surprised, but I was thinking about that and like, yeah, the person that I am and the way that my relationships have changed going through a quote unquote, not just going through a little baby spiritual awakening where I like bought some tarot cards, but really like becoming like a full-fledged psychic and energy healer and talking to people who have passed over. And I will say, like, a lot of this awakening and a lot of this journey was done in private. I really didn't tell many people, and I'm very glad that I didn't because I think it would have discouraged me. I wouldn't have made the investments that I did. I wouldn't have taken some of these risks. And sometimes it is a little bit easier to listen to your intuition in a vacuum because, like you said, so many people are conditioned to not trust themselves, to do things status quo, to not really defy logic. And so, as much as somebody loves you, they just want you to be safe and happy. And a lot of people's idea of safety and happiness is not the same idea that your intuition has for you. And so, in the beginning, I definitely did a lot of this work in a vacuum. And I think that really helped me kind of just like be on my own journey with it. I will say, my boyfriend, who's been with me for this entire time, he's definitely like, yeah, like it was interesting. It was, and and I think there's been also, but having him be, he's very like, I don't know how to even say this. He's very like Virgo, practical, logical man energy. And he's actually really helped me though, like temper some of the waves that come with walking a spiritual path. I think at first you feel a little bit superior and then you feel a little bit like smug and then you're like, why doesn't everybody else know this? And that's all you want to talk about. And I'm very grateful for actually having him by my side to help me temper some of those like spiritual extremes that we can kind of walk through as we start to open to this information. Other people in my life, I think I just have discerned over time who to tell it to and who not to. I think being really open online was a challenge for me. And it still is. I think at the end of the day, I think I've only recently really come to a place where I'm just like, this is who I am and this is what I'll be doing for the rest of my life. But I've never really had this feeling of like needing people to believe it. I've never been, if you don't vibe with psychics, if you don't vibe with the fact that I can talk to somebody who's passed over, then like we're just not the right fit. And like you don't have to like sit at my table. Like that's fine. There's a million other ones you could sit at. So I've never felt this pressure that I need to convert everybody to my beliefs or my perceptions. All I really want, I guess the message that I really feel called to share is not even really about psychic mediumship or work. It's really just about intuition and of reminding people how deeply intuitive they are and that they have their own gifts. My business model is deeply flawed because I really don't want people to come back to me. I want them to be able to rely on themselves and their own intuitive gifts. And yeah, I think over time I had to honestly shift. It wasn't so much about the relationships and the people around me, like people being mean or judgy, which definitely that happened. And I've had certain friendships and relationships fall away, and I've had to grieve a lot of old identities and wanting to be this like cool music person or wanting just to be normal and just have a 9 to 5 and just really having to grieve certain phases of my life and things I thought I once wanted. But it wasn't so much about the people not accepting me or not loving me. It just almost came from like a difference in values and how I wanted to spend
Mm.
my time. And I think, to be honest, I was probably my own biggest hater for a long time because it was very much like, who am I to say that I can read you? Who am I to say that I can give advice? And I think I really had to make peace with myself for even wanting to walk this path because there's just so much wrapped up in it. And sometimes it's hard to feel worthy of doing this type of work, to be honest.
I think a lot of us move through that kind of imposter syndrome in all different areas of our life, whatever it is. And it does take this moment where we have to decide, am I gonna own who I am and go after what I want, or am I going to keep myself stuck because of the fear of judgment or whatever is coming up for me? And to really be like, no, this is who I am. I'm going to trust myself. I'm going to allow myself to be seen. And I had a similar process in moving through social media and just opening myself up to that. And it can be very uncomfortable to be seen in that way and to just allow yourself to, again, this word power has been coming up for me in this conversation, to own our power and to be seen in that power and to not feel like we have to shrink it or hide it away or shame it. When it comes to your intuition, when you feel that imposter syndrome come up or you're just doubting what you're doing, how do you move through that? And do you feel like you rely on your intuition to strengthen that confidence?
Like you said, it's something that I come up against, right? I'm not a perfect person, as as we've established several times throughout this episode by me. And I definitely have, yeah, days or moments where I'm feeling that imposter syndrome. I'm doubting myself. I have this intuitive download and I'm like, what is this? I don't want to do this. Like, why am I being told to do this? Like, that's so stupid. And it's like a process, like there's very few times where like the download drops in or something drops in and I'm like, oh, well, okay, perfect. Let me just go do it. Like usually there's a little bit of a wrestling match that happens. And it depends on the area of life. Like stuff in my business, I feel very like when the download drops in, I'm like, sure. But when it comes to maybe something around my friends or money or my partner, sometimes there's downloads that I get that really feel quite scary, that feel like, oh, I don't want to walk away from this friendship yet, though. They've been in my life for 15 years, but my intuition is whispering that they are draining my energy. Being in this friendship partnership with them isn't, really for my best and highest good. I need to take some time away. I need to set boundaries. And that can feel like a bit of a dance. And so, how I move through that is, I guess, upon getting the download, I think I just do what a lot of people do when they get an uncomfortable intuitive message and you're just like, push it to the side. But the good thing about your intuition is that she always comes back around, like, and she gets louder and more annoying. And, you really can't ignore her for very long. And I think I'm at the point now where my intuition doesn't have to scream at me, but she definitely gets to a point where sometimes she's yelling, and that can be through an incident, using the friendship example, like an incident with that friend, or a really like weird dinner, or just something driving me to tears. And it's at that point I sit down again and I get the intuitive download and I have to trust it or I have to take action on it. And I think people too, especially if it's like kind of a bigger download that feels a little scary, you can also take baby steps towards it as well. And so maybe that's like sending a text like, hey, like I would like, us to start communicating this way, or setting that baby boundary. You don't have to like cut this person out of your life, but you can slowly kind of shift and change things and like use the intuitive download as honestly like a guide or a suggestion. It doesn't have to be verbatim. It doesn't have to be these big, massive swings like cutting someone out of your life or quitting your job, right? It's just trying to gently nudge you towards a different direction, and you can walk in that direction however you choose. And I think that's why people get really afraid and become paralyzed, because they feel like following their intuition has to mean some massive life shift. Or if all of a sudden your intuition is saying your partner like, oh, like they're not the right match, or feeling really off, I'm intuiting that there's just something like not right here. I'm not like, okay, let me just break up with you. Maybe that next right intuitive step is, hey, let's have a conversation or go on a date or do something as a couple that brings us a little bit closer. So it's just kind of being in conversation with the download rather than being like, ooh, okay, now I have to take some big scary action.
Yeah, and something that I really believe is that coming back to this connection to ourselves, we don't have to act on it at all. The first step is to just admit it to ourselves, to just
Mm,
have the courage to be like, okay, I'm getting this message. My intuition's telling me that I need to break up with my boyfriend. I'm not ready to do that yet. That's terrifying, but can I at least say it to myself? Can I
mm.
at least maybe write it in my journal? Can I at least maybe, and then from there, you maybe get more comfortable saying it out loud or talking to a friend about it or a therapist. And then you can move through it with those harder, more challenging things. But I think if we have this relationship with ourselves where I will admit to myself anything that comes up, and also the safety to know I don't need to act on it yet. And that can allow us to feel more in control, yes, but also safe enough to continue the process forward versus like immediately shutting ourselves down and being like, no, I can't even deal with this at all. And then we just push it further and further away.
And it's in that pushing it further away that we start to experience things like anxiety, depression, because you're like, wait, you haven't admitted it. You haven't looked at it. You haven't held it up. It looked at it from all sides, right? You know, admitting it and receiving the download, it kind of allows you to then go on a journey with it. And maybe, yeah, it doesn't mean you end up breaking up with your boyfriend, but maybe that download of feeling like, wait, I want to break up with them leads to conversations with them that take your relationship even deeper to the next level. I mean, to be honest, like that's something that's happened. I've been in my relationship for 7 years, and there's definitely been moments over the years where I'm like, oh, we are not vibing. But in admitting that to myself, right, I was able to then like almost hold the download up and like look at it from all of these different sides and take these different actions and actually change the outcome of maybe where things were headed. And that is something that I really feel called to in this work as a psychic, is that I'm not somebody who is just like telling you a future that's set in stone. I'm telling you the direction of your life based on your beliefs, your thoughts, your actions, your habits, the way you're spending your time, who you're spending it with. And if you see that all for what it is and you see that direction or the thing that I'm telling you and you're happy with it or you're unhappy with it, mostly if you're unhappy with it, then you can kind of start to make some of those changes to shift your timeline. I think relationship can get a little bit tricky because that involves two people, but when it comes to career and business, it's you really have a lot of control and agency over the way things are going. And so it's not really my job to say, hey, this is your future. It's more of my job to say, like, hey, like, this is the way things are going. If you're unhappy with it, these are the things I would suggest to move you in a direction that feels more aligned.
And often I think people can feel like intuition is so flowy and woo woo and just like airy, like something we can't grasp, but really it gives us so much control. Like does have this feminine energy to it, like you were talking about, but it also it gives us our power back. And that in and of itself can be very scary. But what all we need to focus on are the little daily, day by day moments. We don't have to take it all big picture and be like, how can I control the outcome of my career path? We can just be like, what small action am I having the intuitive download to take in this moment? And that allows us to feel safe in the power that we have.
Yeah, it's so funny. There's so many synchronicities in this conversation. I was literally just recording a TikTok about how intuition isn't about having the big picture vision for your life. It's actually about getting the next small right action towards your soul. And I was like, I was literally in the shower having that download. So it's just so funny that you just said that back to me, of course, because it really is. Intuition is so much more manageable and bite-sized and tangible and grounded than people believe it is. It's not some magical superpower. It's not like all of a sudden I just see like this movie of how my life is gonna go and I just like I have this crazy vision, like because your soul really isn't attached to anything, right? It's not attached to the dream house, the dream car, the dream partner. Your soul doesn't need anything. It just wants to grow and expand. And when you kind of move in that direction, you end up in a life that's so much better than like the mind movie. And so, like, why not be led by these small, magical little actions rather than moving towards some like picture that your mind tells you is going to make you happy? And I think that's where like real alignment comes from.
Exactly. And I also want to talk about your energy healings because we were able to do one together yesterday and it was so beautiful. And there was this structure to it. And like you were saying, you give the feminine structure and it can expand even more. And so I really loved that, especially me being a Virgo. You know, I like the structure, I like that stability. And I have had different energy readings and I've connected with many different spiritual guides and done all the different things, many different things. But yours felt really, it felt different in the sense that I felt your confidence and I felt this focused, intentional energy. And I really appreciated that. And also, I would just love to hear more about your process in developing your structure with your energy healings, what your intention is with them, and how you grew to be so connected to them.
Yeah, energy healing is something that I've recently stepped into, and it's something that I resisted for quite a while, which is so funny because I kind of did like the hard thing first. I was like walking around saying I'm a psychic medium, and so you would have thought that like doing, energy like, would have felt easier, but I don't know. For some reason, I was like, I don't know. I just was feeling a bit, yeah, that imposter syndrome within everything you said. Thank you so much for those kind words. It was so fun to do it for you. I get so much deep insight when I do an energy healing on somebody, and it allows me to feel of service in a different way than my psychic readings do and that is ultimately kind of what led me to doing these healings. I've been giving psychic readings for 5 years now, and I am big on giving tangible action steps for anybody who leaves my readings. I want you to leave with more answers than questions. I want you to say, okay, these are the things I'm going to do, the books I'm going to read. And I felt myself often referring people out for certain things that I kept kind of being like, oh, like, but I feel like there's some part of me that could help them with that. And it often has to do with kind of these stuck beliefs or stuff kind of stuck in their energy or like blockages and things like that. So I'd refer them out and I'd be like, oh, like, there's no way I could ever do that. And I started working with a mentor over a year ago, and she was gently kind of guiding me in this direction. I had signed up to work with her to deepen my psychic gifts, but she started really pushing me to go into this energy shamanic healing type route. And I one day just put the offer up on my site as like I think it was free. And I was like, if anybody signs up, I'll just figure out how to do it. I had been working with her and training, obviously practicing on certain people close to me, but I was a little bit hesitant to give it to the world and find my structure. And somebody signed up, and they're actually a long-term client of mine. I was like, oh shit, better figure this out. And that day I just had the download for it. And what I do, what you experienced, is I pull tarot cards in the form of somebody's energy body. So I pull cards aligned with each of their chakras, and the cards kind of tell me what's going on in each of their energy centers. I use my pendulum to kind of discern which chakras or energy centers are functioning optimally or not so optimally, which things are throwing off, I guess, their balance, right? Because I really believe, and what I've come to find, especially in my practice with intuition, is that our energy body is everything. When I say energy body, that's all 8 of your chakras plus the extras, your aura. Your energy is really your magnet. And when your energy is clear and open, it allows you to be more intuitive, be more connected to your soul. Not only are you receiving messages, you don't have like these stuck beliefs that kind of keep you from acting on them. You don't have some past life stuff. It just kind of clears your channel, and it gives you almost a better baseline to really step up and embody the energy of the person that you're meant to be. And that is where I started to feel deeply connected to doing that energy healing. Because I was like, if I can not only give somebody information about their life and the future and all of that stuff, but if I can also help them really clear the things that are holding them back, but then also really give them this even playing field to step into the things that they need to embody that next version of self, that's really what I want. And so the cards kind of give me that information, and then I know where we're going to work in our session. And so at that point, my client, they lay down or they sit up, they close their eyes, and I guide them through some gentle breathing. I just help them really drop in. We do things that regulate your nervous system and really bring you into a state of deep relaxation. So that way, like, your mental guard is down, and I'm able to kind of get into your energy. And from there, I use a combination of Reiki, certain shamanic things, kind of depending on what the situation is. For lighter stuff and just general, like, energy blockages, doing that Reiki to open up the throat so someone can have better communication or kind of help bring that into more balance so they feel more able to express themselves authentically. Or with their solar plexus, if there's some heat wounding around being in their power, like they've had some sort of messaging or belief that's really lodged in there, we can kind of break it up through Reiki. Sometimes there's really deep soul level things from past lives. And for that, I would do something called a soul retrieval, where I kind of go in with their soul and I help them rewrite that belief, I guess, on a deep soul level. So that way they can kind of move forward with a bit more ease and they're no longer like playing out the repeating action in their life. And I find that works really well with certain physical things. I honestly work on somebody until the guides in my pendulum tell me that they're back into balance. And sometimes people need to come back multiple times to work with something because some things are really deep, but other times it's just kind of one and done and you're in balance and you're in alignment. But I love giving them. I feel like they really help people just feel more at ease within themselves and their ability to trust their intuition and to really live as this like soul self embodiment.
And after you do the energy healings, do you feel like there's things that people need to do to maintain that connection with themselves that you're able to help them with? Or is that they have to now take that and take the power and the accountability to connect with themselves on a daily basis?
I like to think that the healings open up a pathway for people to, yeah, take that accountability. But what can often happen too, especially when I'm going through the cards, there's almost like hints of where they need to work and what they need to do. So once they leave me, and I need to send you yours, is like I tell them the breakdown of the cards and their energy centers. And my hope is that in reading that and in seeing where some of like the imbalances are or what the current energy is, they start to say, oh, okay, interesting. Like my root is off balance. Like I need to spend more time grounding. And they feel a bit more ease in doing so because we've cleared whatever thing is keeping them from feeling unsafe in grounding into their root chakra. Maybe there was some trauma there and it just didn't feel safe or possible for them to slow down or enjoy resting or relaxing or meditating. But after we've kind of cleared that, they can say, oh, okay, maybe I'll try this, and that will feel a little bit easier. It's not a perfect system, but it's me creating a way for people to have more agency in a way that feels a little bit easier because we're clearing out some of those subconscious things. But, people come back to me all the time for all sorts of stuff. So I walk people through pretty big transformations, to be honest, and I'm always honored when people want to rely on psychic and energetic healing support for whatever they're going through.
And it's just another support system, another tool to bring you back to yourself. That's what I really feel. And when you're connecting to other people's intuition, does that take a second to touch into it? Or when you're walking out in the world, do you feel like you can get messages about other people just all of a sudden?
I love this question because this is something that I feel like I really need to talk about more. I'm so big on what I call psychic boundaries. And it's something that was honestly like really drilled into me by some of my early mentors. Because like I said, I was never that person just in any ways who was out in the world getting messages really. And I really learned the power of once you open your gifts, once you're in that process of really becoming more intuitive, you naturally are, yeah, more open. And I realized just from hearing stories from my mentors and other people how quickly that can go wrong. You could start to just get messages, you're kind of reading people without their consent. Things can attach to you if you are someone who believes in entities and just like weird energies. Other people can just like they feel your openness and they want to like take advantage of that. And so I learned very early on how to establish psychic boundaries with myself. I kind of made an energetic deal, I guess, with my guides, with my team, with all of the beings that help me do this work. That, yeah, when I'm in session, when I'm in reading and I have somebody's consent, that's the only time I'm getting and intuiting messages about somebody. And I've kind of made that really clear. I think what people kind of forget is that, like, you get to, like, make your own rules to the game. It's all kind of like you could say, hey, when someone books a psychic reading through my site and they pay, they're consenting for their energy to be read by me. And then I can do that exchange. I arrive to the session and I'm open. But when I'm in the grocery store, that person hasn't given me their consent. And so my centers like don't open, I guess. That isn't to say I don't get feelings about people and places our intuition is natural, but I'm never quite like reading someone. Like I would never be like, oh, their root chakra is really looking a little crazy. I would never.
Mhm.
But there's certain psychics that do, and there's certain people that do live that way. But I just could never. I live in New York City. I've lived in LA. It's just wouldn't be safe or conducive to my lifestyle. And there have been times where I haven't fully shut off from a reading because what some of my like I said, the beginning of my psychic boundaries starts with consent and opening the session and saying who and what I want to connect with, who's invited into the reading. And then the end of the session is me disconnecting from that psychic space. So I basically imagine like a room and I clean the room and I have a little bouncer who tells me when everybody's out of the room. And then I have white light wash over me and I'm done. And I say my full human name and I'm back in my humanness. I'm not someone who wants to walk around in my psychicness all the time because I don't think it would be very productive for me. But I think anybody who is who's like their gifts have turned on or they've had some sort of like awakening and they're suddenly like in the world, getting messages, seeing visions, looking at people's auras, you can pull that energy back. You can set boundaries. You could talk to your guides and your team and you can tell them, hey, this is when I want to see this type of stuff and this is when I don't. And so you get to set those boundaries and parameters for yourself.
Yeah, and I feel like that brings it back to if you want to be an intuitive person and healthfully an intuitive person, you need to have this relationship with yourself. You need to be able to sit down with yourself and tune in and have that conversation. So I think that's really important to highlight. I'd love to know if there's any messages that you're getting right now that you feel called to share. I understand it doesn't always work like that, but if there's anything coming through you or that you can connect to that you feel like needs to be said right now.
Yeah, let me see. Hang on. Yeah, I keep getting this message around softening, which I think is an interesting message because it's September. A lot of the stuff you see online is going hard this month, back to school, going after your goals, however many months left in the year. And yes, for sure, do everything you want to do in those realms and take action and work hard and be disciplined and be devoted. But at the same time, can you find softness within that? Can you soften into a deeper intention around your goals or the amount of money that you want to make or the reason that you want to make a certain move in your social life or your friend groups? Can you connect to a deeper, more soul-based intention around those goals? Can you take some time to slow down and sit with yourself and really ask yourself, yeah, some of those deeper questions. Ask yourself about your why. Can you ask for support in the places that you need to? Right? Can you trust that you don't also have to just be working a million hours? You can take time to rest and be soft. And it's about finding this balance between softness and hustle and kind of being a bit more strategic about it. I keep getting messages in a lot of the readings that I'm doing and the things that I channel for myself just around a different way of attaining and achieving. And I think that it's interesting because there's been a really funny switch. I think for a while there was this soft, feminine, flowy approach to business and life. And then people have really done a 180. And now I'm not one of those, soft, feminine leaders. I go hard and this and that. And it's just funny. The contrast and the big switch that I've seen multiple times over the course of my life now, especially perhaps when it comes to women in business, is what I'm thinking of specifically. And they're saying, can you make this season about balance and finding that balance for yourself? The words that keep flashing across my mind's eye are soft and savage, which I think is a really cute way to say it. And it's just you can be both. And I think really sitting with how to find that balance for yourself this month and the next however many months of the year, I think that will just allow for a lot more ease. And I think your mind will want to resist it and you'll probably swing too far in one direction and go too far in the other. But you have to play and you'll find that perfect balance for yourself. But ultimately, always coming back to what feels aligned to my soul. And I think that will always allow you to find that portal for softness. Softness doesn't mean slowness, it doesn't mean rest. It actually, I think, just means deeper soul alignment.
Soft and savage. I love that. And I truly, when you are living intuitively and allowing your intuition to guide your path, you don't have to be so focused on achieving the goals and going hard or being soft and leaning into the feminine. You can just be like, what is this present moment asking of me? What do I need right now? What am I being guided to do right now? And then you will more naturally find the balance because you're just listening to what you need versus labeling yourself in one specific way or choosing a certain lifestyle for yourself that you see online, and you're just letting your path be your own. And this topic is actually, it's really interesting you brought this up. Well, one, I'm feeling this so strongly in my own life in certain ways. And also, this episode will probably come out near the end of the year. So we'll be getting closer to the new year, and people are going to be talking about these topics even more. And I'm such a strong advocate for the fact that December is not the new year, and it's January is not the new year. It's not the time to set the goals. It's not the time to go hard. It's not the time to be really strict and action oriented. It's more so the time to be in the embodiment and be in the presence with yourself of what is wanting to be revealed, because we're still in that winter hibernation time. So I think this message is even more relevant for when this episode will come out. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Okay, last question. Living intuitively wild means connecting to your true self and living dedicated to who you are at your core, no matter what. How do you feel like you live intuitively wild?
How I live intuitively wild is ruthlessly and constantly making space for my intuition and trusting it fearlessly, even when my mind doesn't want me to, when it feels scary, when other people in my life doubt me. I feel like it just when I live from that space, it's not so much like about the specific things about my psychicness or my healings or writing or posting on social media. It's just about being the type of person who is able to receive and embody the downloads and the messages that I'm getting. And I feel like that always brings me closer to the most true version of me, which is someone who is inherently free and powerful and happy and loving and kind of always living her life in deep service. It's all of those small intuitive actions that I try to choose and embody on a daily basis.
And that brings it back to this topic of, to be intuitive, we have to be connected to ourselves. And when we connect to ourselves, we reclaim our power. Caroline, thank you so much for being here. All of your links will be below, but is there anything in particular that you want to share with people? Any last things that you want to say?
Thank you so much for having me. I loved this conversation. It was so fun. And if anybody wants to book a reading with me, hit the link below. My website is www.itspeaceandchaos.com. And around this time, I will probably be pre-launching the second round of my group coaching program, Unshakable. So if you are interested in learning more about your intuition, how to work with it, how to have a deeper spiritual connection, definitely check out the waitlist for that. And Rachel will have the link.
Yes, yes, definitely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.